Ever felt like you need, I don't know, a shortcut to truly grasp the really profound questions of existence?
Uh-huh. The big ones?
Exactly, the kind that philosophers have wrestled with for centuries, questions that feel just as relevant today, maybe even more so.
Definitely.
Well, today we're taking you on a deep dive, a real journey into the penetrating mind of Arthur Schopenhauer.
Ah, Schopenhauer. Always sharp.
Unbelievably sharp. He's a philosopher whose observations on the world, on human nature, our societies, they're so uncomfortably accurate and surprisingly prescient. It's almost like he's looking directly into our modern dilemmas from, what, 2 centuries ago?
And that's precisely our mission with this deep dive. We're exploring some carefully selected excerpts from his incredible collection, Religion, a Dialogue, etc.
Right.
But, don't let the title fool you. This isn't simply a dry theological thing.
No, not at all.
Schopenhauer uses religion more as a launch pad, really, to discuss the very fabric of how we perceive truth, how societies are structured, how they're maintained, and maybe most fundamentally, how we understand ourselves and our place in a world often driven by forces we don't fully grasp. So our goal here is to extract the most potent nuggets of wisdom from this really rich material. We want to help you grasp Schopenhauer's unique, often, let's face it, challenging perspective on everything from faith to, believe it or not, our reading habits,
Yeah, that part's fascinating.
and why these insights remain incredibly relevant for us today.
We've really got an intellectual feast laid out for us here, drawing from a fantastic collection of his essays. And the great thing is, this isn't someone else's take on Schopenhauer.
No interpretation needed.
It's direct, unmediated. Schopenhauer's own words, his own thought process. And he's known for a style that's really rooted deeply in facts and observation, which maybe surprisingly for a major philosopher often makes his work incredibly approachable, very impactful.
Yeah, he can be quite cuttingly clear.
So while religion, a dialogue will be our main focus, our anchor, we're also pulling fascinating threads from some other key pieces. A few words on pantheism, on books and reading,
As you mentioned, yeah.
physiognomy, reading, faces, psychological observations, and the Christian system. It's a pretty comprehensive look at his worldview, and honestly, it's going to challenge a lot of, well, conventional wisdom.
It absolutely will. And to truly appreciate Schopenhauer's arguments, especially the ones we'll get into, it's really essential to start with his foundational concept, the unifying principle he saw driving, well, everything.
Okay.
He introduces it kind of subtly in the prefatory note to this very collection, but it's the absolute bedrock of his entire philosophy,
Oh,
the will.
Brill, right.
Now, when Schopenhauer talks about the will, he's not talking about conscious human decision-making like, your will to have coffee this morning.
Okay, so not willpower in that sense.
Yeah. No, not at all. For him, the will is something much more profound, more primal. It's a blind, irrational, ceaseless striving, an insatiable urge that underlies literally everything in the universe.
Wow, okay.
Imagine it as this raw, fundamental force of desire, a relentless push just to exist, to manifest. This will is what, in his view, evolves organisms. It drives them, but not towards some grand purpose.
Not towards perfection or anything.
No, simply to perpetuate themselves, to desire, to live. Even human intelligence, our intellect, he sees as just a servant of this will.
A servant.
Yeah, like a sophisticated tool developed by the will to better achieve its own blind and often painful aims.
So, okay, if the will is this fundamental, insatiable desire, then life itself, at its core, is defined by perpetual need
Right.
and therefore by pain.
That's exactly it. If we're constantly striving, we're constantly lacking something, we're never satisfied.
Right.
And for Schopenhauer, true happiness isn't found in fulfilling these endless desires because, well, they just breed new ones, right?
Yeah, the cycle continues.
Instead, he provocatively suggests that genuine peace, or maybe something like happiness, lies in a renunciation of the will to live.
Whoa, okay. Renunciation.
Yeah, overcoming this fundamental driving force.
Okay.
It's a profound shift in perspective, moving away from our usual notions of striving for fulfillment.
Definitely not the standard self-help advice.
Not even close. And this concept of the will and the inherent pain and striving it brings is the absolutely crucial lens through which Schopenhauer views everything else we're going to discuss today, especially religion, morality, even our most, mundane behaviors. It truly colors his entire philosophical landscape.
Okay, that makes sense. It sets the stage.
Absolutely. And with that lens firmly in place, Schopenhauer turns his penetrating gaze to the role of religion in society. He famously does this in Religion, a Dialogue.
The dialogue.
Yeah, and he uses this brilliant literary device here, a conversation between two characters, Demopheles and Philalethes. And this isn't just like a stylistic choice. It allows him to explore this deep, often uncomfortable tension between the practical societal usefulness of religion.
What it does for people.
Exactly.
Right.
And its potential for obstructing the pursuit of pure, unvarnished truth.
Ah, the classic clash.
Precisely. It's a nuanced, dynamic debate. It's far from a simple dismissal or, the blind endorsement of faith. He's digging deeper.
Okay, so let's dive into this dialogue then. Demopheles, he's one of the speakers, right? He kicks things off presenting a rather pragmatic argument for religion, almost utilitarian.
Very much so.
He suggests that while the other guy, Philalethes, might be all about seeking pure truth, religion actually serves this indispensable practical function for what he calls get this, the crude susceptibilities and clumsy intelligence of the masses.
Ouch. Yeah, he doesn't mince words.
No, he really doesn't. He goes on to label religion as the metaphysics of the masses, basically a necessary allegorical interpretation of life specifically tailored to their level of understanding.
Right. Like a simplified version for people who can't handle the raw stuff.
Essentially, yeah. He's saying that for the average person who's mostly busy with, physical needs, survival, maybe some basic fun, religion offers the only way they can grasp any high import of life, any deeper meaning or moral framework beyond just the material world.
Precisely. And if you look at the broader implications of what Demopheles is arguing, he's suggesting that without religion, this vast majority of humanity, focused on the tangible, the immediate, they would simply never grasp that high import of life.
They wouldn't get there on their own.
He thinks not. They wouldn't intuit the ethical complexities or the, grander schemes of existence. Religion, he claims, steps in to provide essential rules of action, moral codes that are easily digestible and enforceable.
Like a shortcut to morality.
In a way, yes. And crucially, it offers comfort and consolation in suffering and death. These are functions that, for Demopheles, abstract philosophy or just naked truth simply cannot fulfill for the common person.
Too cold, maybe. Too abstract.
Perhaps. He argues that religion, in its allegorical form, achieves maybe just as much practical good, if not more, than pure truth could ever hope to for this large segment of humanity. Without it, he seems to imply society might just descend into chaos or, nihilism.
He takes this idea of practical necessity even further, doesn't he? Suggesting that truth itself, especially deep philosophical truth, often needs a mythical vehicle to even be conveyed to the masses.
Yeah, the analogies he uses are quite vivid.
Right, like gaseous chlorine being too potent, needing a solid base for medicine.
Or needing nitrogen mixed with oxygen to breathe.
Exactly. In the same way, Demopheles argues that naked truth, unadorned, unfiltered, is out of place before the eyes of the profane vulgar.
Profane vulgar. He really lays it on thick.
He does. It's too potent, too abstract, maybe even too unsettling for most people to just take straight. So it has to be, diluted, wrapped in allegory, presented as myth to be effective, digestible, and ultimately good for society.
And this is where Demopheles' argument really anchors itself in how society functions. He flat out asserts that states, justice systems, the rule of law, they simply cannot be upheld without religion's help.
A necessary complement, he calls it?
Yes. It provides the moral glue that legal statutes alone can't. He even brings in Kant, saying there must be a public standard of right and virtue, and that, fascinatingly, it is a matter of indifference what heraldic figures are inscribed on it, so long as they signify what is meant.
So the specific story doesn't matter as much as the moral outcome.
That's the implication. The specific dogma might be less important than the universal moral principles it instills. And he points to history. Ancient India, Persia, Egypt, the Jews, Greeks, Romans, even modern European Christian states, arguing all their social fabric and state constitutions, were founded on a system of metaphysics which is acknowledged by all. For Demopheles, this societal function isn't just helpful, it's absolutely paramount. The practical effectiveness of the allegory outweighs any philosophical fussiness about pure, unadorned truth.
But this is where the fireworks really start, right? Because Philalethes, the truth seeker, he comes back swinging.
Oh, absolutely, with a fiery critique.
He argues that demanding a single, state-enforced, conventional system of metaphysics isn't just impractical, it's intolerance and cruelty itself.
Strong words.
Yeah. He laments how such a system actively paralyzes original thought, stifles unbiased judgment, and basically nips in the bud the highest powers of human intelligence.
So it's not just a compromise for him, it's active suppression.
Exactly. It prevents people from truly thinking for themselves, from questioning the world around them. It's a lid on human potential.
And Philalethes, in this exchange, he really doesn't hold back at all. He pulls out this horrifying list of historical evils, directly blaming them on religiously enforced dogma.
Like what?
Things like the heretical tribunals, inquisitions, religious wars, crusades, Socrates' cup of poison, Bruno's and Vanini's death in the flames.
Wow. He connects all that directly to enforced belief.
Directly. He argues, quite forcefully, that theism lies like a mountain on all intellectual efforts, especially philosophical ones, and it fundamentally blocks intellectual progress.
How so?
Well, in his view, by explaining everything through simplistic, often unquestionable concepts like God, devil, angels, demons, religion just stifles genuine inquiry. It discourages science, prevents humanity from really grappling with the true complexities of the natural world of our own existence.
It provides easy answers that stop further questions.
That's the idea. It reduces profound mysteries to, superficial divine or demonic interventions.
He also homes in on how religion spreads, doesn't he? How it gets a foothold.
Yes, he sees a fundamental flaw there. He points out that it appeals to belief as demanded by revelation, not reasoned conviction.
Faith over reason.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it cleverly takes advantage of childhood, where the capacity for believing is strongest.
The early inoculation.
Precisely. And he argues this early imprinting can have chilling, long-lasting effects. He gives the example of Spaniards viewing auto da fe as the public burning of heretics as most pious acts. Or the thugs in India murdering, believing they were serving the goddess Kali. This early unquestioning indoctrination, he contends, allows religious dogma to stifle conscience, compassion, and finally every feeling of humanity.
It overrides basic human empathy.
That's his argument. He even criticizes the English, a nation he otherwise seems to respect for its discernment, intelligence, power of judgment, for being abased and made ridiculous by their stupid ecclesiastical superstition, blaming clerical control over education.
So for Philalethes, this early programming fundamentally messes with the person's ability to reason and feel properly later on.
It distorts their core faculties, yes. And this brings us to a really crucial point where Philalethes directly challenges Demopheles' whole premise about religion being essential for law and order.
How does he do that?
He points to the ancient Greeks. He argues they had nothing at all of what we understand by religion in the modern sense. No sacred books, no rigid dogma, no priests preaching morality. Their priests mostly did temple stuff.
Right, mythology but not dogma in the same way.
Exactly. Yet, he emphasizes it was the Greeks who laid the very foundations for our own laws and civil order, and their societies lasted over 1,000 years.
That's a powerful counterexample.
He sees it as strong historical evidence directly countering the claimed practical aims and necessity of religion that Demopheles is pushing. For Philalethes, the Greeks prove that a sophisticated functioning society, one that even forms the basis of ours, doesn't need a dogmatic, revealed faith to establish laws or maintain cohesion.
So that allegorical nature of religion, the mythical vehicle that Demopheles saw as necessary, Philalethes sees it very differently.
Totally differently. He calls it a fatal alliance.
Fatal, why?
His argument is that for an allegory to actually work, to move the masses, it has to claim it's true in the proper sense of the word meaning. Literally true.
I can't admit it's just a story.
Exactly. And this pretense of literal truth, he argues, leads to irreparable mischief, the permanent evil, and an unavoidable conflict with the noble endeavor after pure truth.
It actively fights against real understanding.
That's his point. He uses that striking analogy, religion is like a wooden leg replacing a natural one. Sure, it might do the job, kind of, but it's ultimately a construct, an inferior substitute that prevents the development of genuine philosophical understanding.
So it's a compromise that holds humanity back.
For Philalethes, yes. And he pushes his critique even further, claiming religions can actually have a decidedly demoralizing influence.
Demoralizing? How?
He makes this provocative assertion. Duties towards God and duties towards humanity are in inverse ratio.
Whoa, what does he mean by that?
In his view, religions often proclaim that faith, ceremonies, rites are more agreeable to the divine will than moral actions. So ritual becomes a substitute for genuine ethical behavior.
Doing the right things replaces being good.
That's the danger he sees.
Mhm.
He cites that chilling example of slave owners in North America who'd consider working on Sunday a grave sin
That felt okay about owning people.
and still hoped for eternal happiness, yes. He then lists a whole catalog of religious atrocities, crusades, extermination of native populations in America, persecution of heretics, and asks pointedly, has mankind actually been made morally better by Christianity?
Tough question.
And what's really striking is his observation that these fanatical horrors are mostly linked to monotheistic creeds because they're inherently intolerant of other gods, other faiths, leading to far more conflict and cruelty than, say, the often more tolerant polytheistic systems.
That's a really sharp distinction. So the debate really boils down to this core tension, doesn't it? Utility versus truth, comfort versus, well, reality.
Exactly, and at one point Philalethes makes this grudging concession. He admits religion can be a pious fraud, and in specific cases like taking an oath.
Swearing on a Bible, for example.
Right. He admits that's an undeniable example of the practical efficacy of religion. It leverages belief to compel truthfulness.
Okay, so a small point for Demopheles there.
A small one, but Philalethes immediately undercuts it. He argues that if you suddenly repealed all criminal laws, neither you nor I would have the courage to go home under the protection of religious motives.
Meaning religious belief alone wouldn't keep order.
Not on its own, no. He insists that ultimately the truth is the only safe thing. The truth alone remains steadfast and trusty. It is the only solid consolation. It is the indestructible diamond.
So any comfort from illusion is fragile, temporary.
Inherently inferior to the hard-won clarity of truth, in his view.
And how does Demopheles respond to that?
This is where Demopheles delivers his finer, quite poignant counterargument. He challenges Philalethes directly, saying he talks as if he has truth in your pocket, but all he really offers are metaphysical systems, in which nothing is certain but the headaches they cost.
Uh-huh. Fair point, maybe.
Demopheles reiterates his core belief. Religions, in their allegorical form, provide inexhaustible consolation and tranquility for the suffering masses. Something, he argues, pure philosophy just can't offer.
Comfort that philosophy lacks.
And something the masses need even more than we do. He frames religious dogma not as a lie, but as truth presented in a mythical, allegorical vesture, which is essential for social order. He insists agreement in the fundamentals of metaphysics is the chief thing for a genuine and lasting bond of union in society.
A shared story holds people together.
Even if the elites know it's just a story. He even suggests powerful figures like princes use God as a bogey to frighten grown-up children to bed with, highlighting religion's enduring utility for social control, completely separate from its literal truth.
Wow, that's cynical, but maybe realistic.
It's certainly a pragmatic view.
So after all this back and forth, this intense debate, how does Schopenhauer leave it? What's the conclusion?
Well, he has them reach this fascinating kind of uneasy agreement. They concede that religion is like Janus, the two-faced god.
Or Yama, the Brahmin god of death.
Right, has two faces, one friendly, the other sullen. Each of us has kept his eye fixed on one alone.
Ah, so they both only saw part of the picture.
Exactly. It's a really powerful image to describe this inherent, almost intractable tension Schopenhauer is exploring. Religion can be both a necessary, comforting social mechanism, providing meaning and order for many,
The friendly face.
and simultaneously a powerful impediment to intellectual freedom and the relentless pursuit of objective truth for others.
The sullen face.
Precisely. This dual nature truly encapsulates a profound complexity of the subject for Schopenhauer. It's not a simple thumbs up or thumbs down, but a deep observation on humanity's often conflicting needs for both comfort and understanding.
That makes a lot of sense. It's not black and white.
Definitely not. And building on this critical look at traditional religion, Schopenhauer then turns his attention to another idea that often presents itself as more philosophical: pantheism. He tackles this in a few words on pantheism.
Okay, pantheism. The idea that God is the world, essentially.
Broadly, yes. God and the universe are identical.
And Schopenhauer's take is pretty sharp, you said.
Oh, yes. His core objection is basically that pantheism says nothing.
Says nothing, how?
He argues it merely adds a superfluous synonym for the word world. To say the world is God, for Schopenhauer, is just explaining the unknown by something even more unknown.
So it doesn't actually clarify anything?
Not in his view. It offers no real insight, no advancement in understanding. It's just a linguistic trick, he suggests, not a genuine philosophical revelation. It leaves us no wiser than we were before.
But his objection goes deeper than just words, right?
Absolutely. It ties back to his core view of the world. He argues that no unprejudiced view of the world as it is, a world he sees as shot through with suffering and the blind striving of the will, could ever lead you to think it's a god.
Because the world is too flawed, too painful.
Exactly. He poses this almost sarcastic question. What kind of ill-advised God would turn into such a world as ours, such a mean, shabby world, so full of misery, need, and death, without measure and without object?
He doesn't hold back.
No. He points to the millions of slaves, the weavers living in misery in his time. For Schopenhauer, all this suffering directly contradicts the idea of a divine presence within the world.
It makes the idea seem absurd.
And precisely. It makes pantheism absolutely absurd to him. While theism, a separate God, might be unproved, pantheism, by forcing the world's suffering to be divine, is logically untenable and morally repugnant, given his pessimistic outlook.
So if the world isn't God and focusing only on its physical side is wrong, what's his alternative?
Well, he concludes that critique by saying that to assert the world is an end in itself, focusing only on its physical aspect and ignoring its profound moral significance, is the most mischievous error sprung from the greatest mental perversity.
Wow. Strong stuff.
It really underscores his deeply moral and metaphysical worldview, tying back to the will. For Schopenhauer, the meaning of the world isn't just in physics or biology, but in its ethical implications, especially suffering and that ceaseless striving. To ignore that moral dimension is to fundamentally misunderstand existence.
Okay, so this worldview, the will, suffering, the moral dimension, it informs everything for him.
Everything. It extends far beyond just theology. It permeates his observations on even the most everyday human activities, like how we gain knowledge, how we see each other.
Which brings us to things like reading.
Exactly. Let's explore how Schopenhauer applies this lens to our intellectual lives, particularly when it comes to books and reading.
Right, on books and reading. You mentioned this earlier, and his insights feel incredibly relevant today in our, constant information overload.
They really do. He argues, quite provocatively, that when we read, another person thinks for us. We merely repeat his mental process.
Just to follow along.
Yeah. And he suggests if you spend almost the whole day in reading, you seriously risk gradually losing your own capacity for independent thought.
Like a muscle you don't use.
Exactly like that. Like someone who always rides eventually forgets how to walk. He even says many learned persons have read themselves stupid.
Read themselves stupid. That's quite a claim.
It is. It's a powerful warning against just passively consuming information. Just absorbing others' thoughts can weaken our own critical thinking.
So what's the point of reading then, according to him, if it can make you stupid?
Well, he's not saying don't read. He's arguing for a specific kind of reading. He stresses the absolute necessity of ruminating on what you've read.
Ruminating, like chewing it over mentally.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Truly setting your own thoughts to work to assimilate the material. Without that active engagement, he warns, knowledge just won't strike root. It stays superficial.
Just facts floating around, not real understanding.
Exactly. And he reserves some really sharp criticism for people who read just for chatter, to sound smart or just to keep up with the newest books.
The bestseller list treadmill.
Right. He dismisses those as rank weeds of literature, written mostly for money and aimed at fools. It's a powerful call for a discerning, active, deeply reflective approach to reading, valuing real assimilation over just quantity, novelty, or social points.
He makes a distinction too, doesn't he, between different kinds of literature.
Yes, a vivid one.
Mm-hmm.
He talks about two literatures. First, there's real literature. This goes sober and quiet, but extremely slow, producing, he reckons, scarcely a dozen works in a century.
The truly enduring stuff.
Yeah. Then there's apparent literature, which goes at a gallop with much noise and shouting, but he warns, disappears quickly into obscurity.
It flashes in the pan.
Right, and he connects this to intellectual history, noting these epicycles deviations where philosophers like Fichte, Schelling, Hegel were maybe temporary trends that ultimately led back to the start. He stresses the need to return to fundamental thinkers like Kant, not get lost in fleeting fashions.
Seek the timeless over the trendy.
That's the core message. He wants depth, genuine insight, not just temporary buzz.
And he has this rather dark view of how great thinkers are often treated, right?
Oh, yes. quite melancholic.
Yeah.
He provocatively suggests we could write a tragical history of literature.
A tragical history.
Yeah, a chronicle showing how the writers and artists who form the proudest possession of the various nations have been treated by them during their lives. He talks about the martyrdom of almost all those who truly enlightened humanity.
Martyrdom.
He sees them as tormented to death, without recognition, without sympathy, without followers, living in poverty while the unworthy gain fame and fortune.
That's incredibly bleak.
It is. He uses that poignant analogy of Esau being supplanted by the disguised Jacob stealing his blessing. It's a stark contrast to the usual story of intellectual progress, highlighting the suffering and neglect often faced by true genius, especially compared to those who achieve fleeting fame through shallower means.
It really makes you question who we celebrate and why.
Absolutely. Makes you wonder who we might be overlooking right now.
That is an uncomfortable thought.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's shift from the intellectual world to the very human one. He also looks at physiognomy, judging character from the face.
Yes, and this is truly fascinating stuff. He asserts that the outer man is a picture of the inner, and the face and expression and revelation of the whole character.
The face doesn't lie.
That's his premise. He calls every human face a hieroglyphic that we instinctively try to decipher, and he argues it provides fuller and more interesting information than his tongue.
More truthful than words.
Far more, he thinks. Because words can be manipulated, used to deceive, but the face offers a direct window into a person's true nature.
And he puts a lot of weight on first impressions, doesn't he?
Huge weight. He stresses that the first sight of a man is absolutely crucial for getting a purely objective view.
Why the first sight specifically?
Because, he reasons, subsequent acquaintance and intercourse will obliterate the impression. Once you start talking, people inevitably use arts of dissimulation. They put on airs, flatter, play roles.
The masks come out.
Exactly. Which makes later judgments less reliable, colored by their performance. He even flips Socrates' famous line, "Talk in order that I may see you," into his own. "Do not speak in order that I may see you."
Wow. Silence reveals more.
For a pure assessment of moral character, yes. It shows his deep skepticism about spoken communication and his belief in the truth revealed through initial silent observation. Our true selves are most visible before we speak.
But he does distinguish between judging intellect and judging character.
Yes, he argues intellectual capacity is much easier of discernment than moral character.
Why is that?
Because intellect is more outwardly expressed, he thinks. It affects a person's gait, every slightest movement. He even claims you could spot a blockhead versus a man of genius just by watching them walk away.
Really?
From behind, that's his claim. But moral qualities, he cautions, lie deeper and are often intentionally covered up.
Harder to see, easier to hide.
Precisely. He warns that while you might look at someone's face and predict they won't write an immortal masterpiece, you absolutely cannot predict they won't commit a terrible crime. Moral nature is far more complex and concealed than intellect.
That hidden depth, which leads us neatly into his psychological observations, right? Delving into the inner workings.
Exactly. Where he explores the dynamics of our mind and being. The central point here is the proportion between the will and the intellect.
Back to the will again.
Always back to the will. The intellect's job, remember, is to light and lead the will.
Okay.
So if you have a violent, unchecked will combined with a weak intellect, that leads to ruinous action impulse over reason.
Makes sense.
But here's the counterintuitive bit. An abnormal degree of strength in intellect, the kind you see in genius, can also be absolutely prejudicial to daily life.
Too much intellect is bad.
It can make one a monstrum per excessum, a monster by excess. Such a genius with overwhelming imagination or analytical power might be too sensitive to the world's suffering, too lost in abstract thought.
And just ill-suited for normal life.
Profoundly ill-suited for the mundane practicalities and social demands of everyday existence.
Yeah.
A tragic burden in a way.
That is a tragic idea. And speaking of raw drives, he sees the will to live most clearly in animals.
Yes, because there it appears without its mask. He thinks our delight in watching animals comes from seeing our own nature in such a simplified form.
Simplified how?
His reasoning is quite cutting. There's only one mendacious being in the world, and that is man. Every other is true and sincere and makes no attempt to conceal what it is.
Ouch. So animals are honest, humans aren't.
Animals, for him, show the raw, unadorned will, free from all the layers of human pretending, hypocrisy, and self-deception. They just are.
And from there, he offers a whole series of quick observations on human psychology.
Yes, a rapid-fire series of really profound, often unsettling insights, like a mosaic.
Okay, give us some highlights.
All right, on habit. It's not just routine, it's the power of inertia applied to motives. An initial reason starts an action, but habit keeps it going by momentum even if the reason's gone.
The action runs on autopilot.
Pretty much. Then, the will to live. It's seen not just in wanting long life, but also in longing for posthumous glory fame after death. He says this strives after a life which is still attainable even though it be a shadowy and ideal one. The will wants to exist even as a memory.
Wow. Even after death.
Then grief. The deep sorrow at losing a friend comes from losing something irreparable, something which no words can express. He uses the Latin omne individuum ineffabili, the ineffable uniqueness of each individual.
You can't replace that specific person.
Never fully. Unhappiness, misfortune. Happiness depends on the proportion which our claims bear to what we get. Not just what you have, but what you expect versus what you receive.
Managing expectations.
Crucially. And our stomach for good fortune is bottomless, but the entrance to it is narrow. We always want more, but can't always handle it. Sudden luck can even be fatal if prior misery reduced our capacity for joy.
That's dark. What about hope?
Hope, he argues, is often a delusion, confusing the desire with the probability. Wishful thinking overriding rational assessment.
And deception.
Deception. We're often misled by our own biases. Trifles unconsciously bias us, he says, quoting Bacon. We wrongly assume things about others, like thinking someone generous must also be just. Our standpoint is too one-sided.
We project onto others.
Constantly. Then vengeance. Famously, the sweetest morsel. It's a way to counter feeling inferior by inflicting injury, trying to show our superiority. But, he adds insightfully, it's often embittered by compassion afterwards.
The satisfaction doesn't last.
Or it comes with a cost. Patience. This is really provocative. He calls it an innate virtue of a phlegmatic, indolent, and spiritless people, as also of women.
Whoa, that's harsh.
Extremely. He suggests it's not really a virtue, but proves that the world is very badly constituted. The need for such extreme patience just shows how much suffering reality forces us to endure.
Patience as a symptom of a bad world.
Exactly. And finally, memory. Like a sieve, with holes getting bigger with age, but somehow bottomless in capacity. He shares a personal story about forgotten words suddenly reappearing years later, suggesting the will sets a watch in the intellect, subconsciously working to retrieve things, shows the mind's active hidden power.
Those are incredibly dense observations, a really pessimistic but analytical view.
Deeply analytical, yes.
And he wraps us up with that beautiful comparison of life to a mosaic.
Yes, comparing the course of our individual life and the events in it to a piece of rough mosaic. We only get a right view, see the significance or beauty when we stand a little way off.
Meaning with time and distance.
Only a considerable time afterwards. It shows his belief that true understanding of our lives or history needs perspective. Wisdom is retrospective. The patterns only emerge when we look back.
That really resonates, gaining clarity later on.
Definitely. And from these deep dives into psychology, Schopenhauer turns his gaze back to religion, specifically focusing on Christianity and comparing it with Eastern philosophies.
Okay, this is where it gets potentially controversial again.
Very much so. He challenges some deeply held Western beliefs head-on, #TagTagTagReV, deconstructing Christianity and the East-West divide.
So, his analysis of Christianity, you said it was unflinching.
Unflinching is a good word.
Yeah.
He claims the church's insistence that reason is totally incompetent and blind regarding religious dogmas is basically an implicit admission that these dogmas are allegorical in their nature.
If reason can't touch it, it must be symbolic.
That's his interpretation. For him, the apparent absurdities in Christian dogma, especially when trying to match the Old and New Testaments, aren't flaws, but the actual mark and sign of this allegory.
They prove it's not literal.
He thinks so. The real mischief, he argues, is religion's refusal to confess their allegorical nature. Instead, it parades doctrines as true sensu proprio, literally true.
And that causes problems.
It leads to continual fraud, he says, creating an unavoidable conflict with genuine philosophical inquiry and the search for objective truth.
He singles out specific doctrines too, right? Like predestination.
Yes, he particularly scrutinizes predestination and grace and eternal damnation. He finds the whole idea of a God who created out of nothing a weak race prone to sin in order to give them over to endless torment simply revolting.
Understandably.
And his objection is sharpened because this same God prescribes forbearance and forgiveness, but exercises none himself.
A divine double standard.
Exactly. He contrasts this sharply with what he sees as the more rational way of metempsychosis reincarnation found in Brahmanism and Buddhism.
How is that more rational to him?
Because in those systems, individual differences, suffering, destiny,
Hmm.
they're seen as the fruits of acts committed in that other world. It provides a logical basis for moral cause and effect that he finds lacking in eternal damnation.
Karma, essentially.
Right. Though he does acknowledge things like purgatory and the restoration of all things as later attempts within Christianity to kind of soften those harsher original doctrines.
Make them a bit more palatable.
A bit, yes. And connecting this to the broader framework, Schopenhauer points out the devil is a personage of the greatest importance in the Christian system.
Why so important?
Well, if you have a God who is absolutely good, wise, and powerful, then the devil becomes logically necessary to explain all the innumerable and measureless evils in the world.
You need someone to blame for the bad stuff.
Exactly. Without a powerful counterforce, suffering becomes inexplicable under an all-good, all-powerful God. He argues that rationalists who tried to do away with the devil actually damaged the coherence of the whole Christian framework.
Interesting. He even suggests historical roots for this.
Yeah, he proposes Jehovah might be a transformation of Ormuzd, the good spirit in Persian dualism, and Satan from Ahriman, the evil spirit, pointing to the ancient Persian influences on this idea of cosmic good versus evil.
And he sees a unique problem with Christianity's structure.
Yes, a unique disadvantage. It's not a pure system of doctrine, but fundamentally a history, a series of events, a collection of facts.
Based on historical events, not just abstract principles.
Right. The life of Christ, crucifixion, resurrection,
Yeah.
these specific events are central to salvation. He contrasts this with Buddhism, where the founder's life is quite separate and different from the dogma. And the dogma itself is universal and equally valid at all times.
Timeless versus time-bound.
Exactly. He notes this historical focus is why, supposedly, the Chinese tended to laugh at missionaries as storytellers, finding the reliance on specific historical events less philosophically solid than a universal doctrine.
Which brings us to a really major critique he levels concerning animals.
Ah, yes. This is profound and, for many, deeply controversial. He identifies a fundamental error of Christianity as its unnatural distinction between humans and the animal world.
Setting humans apart and above.
Completely. Christianity, he argues, makes man all-important and treats animals as merely things, lacking inherent moral worth or soul.
And the consequence of this.
He claims it leads directly to revolting ruffianism in how Christian societies treat animals' pointless killings, cruelty, brutal overwork of horses. This leads to his famous heartbreaking conclusion. Mankind are the devils of the earth, and the animals the souls they torment.
Wow. That's an incredibly strong indictment.
It is. He blames human cruelty to animals directly on this perceived divine separation between humans and other living beings.
And he contrasts this sharply with Eastern thought.
Very sharply. He praises Brahmanism and Buddhism precisely because they recognize humanity's essential identity with animal nature, often through reincarnation, and because they foster profound compassion for all living things.
He gives examples.
Yes, like the great animal hospital at Surat, caring for animals regardless of utility, or the practice of buying and releasing caged birds. These acts show charitable feelings bear fruit in a way that's superfluous in Asia, he argues, because religion already protects animals there.
So he sees Eastern ethics as inherently broader, more compassionate towards all life.
Definitely. He deeply admired that aspect, which he found lacking in the West.
He also contrasts their fundamental worldviews, right? Optimism versus pessimism.
Yes, he characterizes Judaism's fundamental characteristics as realism and optimism.
Mhm.
The material world is real, life is a pleasant gift.
And the East.
Brahmanism and Buddhism he sees as idealism and pessimism. Existence is more like a dream or illusion, and life is the result of our sins, a cycle of suffering to be escaped.
Two very different starting points.
Very different. Although, interestingly, he notes that even Judaism, with the fall and Satan, incorporates a necessary pessimistic element to account for the obvious facts of the world, like suffering, and internal tension there.
And then he makes that really audacious claim about the New Testament's origins.
Oh, yes. He speculates it must be in some way traceable to an Indian source.
Based on what?
He points to the similarities. Its ethical system, its ascetic view of morality, its pessimism, and its avatar, the idea of God incarnate. These, he argues, are all thoroughly Indian.
So he sees Christianity as essentially Indian wisdom grafted onto Judaism.
That's his provocative image. Christian faith sprung from the wisdom of India, then overspreading the old trunk of rude Judaism like ivy, transforming it into life and truth. He flat out asserts everything which is true in Christianity may also be found in Brahmanism and Buddhism.
Leaving Judaism with,
Just the unique doctrines of a nothing quickened into life or a world made in time ideas he found less philosophically compelling. It's a radical view of syncretism, not unique revelation.
truly radical. And his final word on revelation itself?
His ultimate conclusion is pretty blunt. Whoever seriously thinks that superhuman beings have ever given our race information as the aim of its existence is still in his childhood.
Belief in divine messages is childish.
He sees it as naive, yes.
Yeah.
He firmly argues there is no other revelation than the thoughts of the wise, even if these profound human insights often get clothed in strange allegories and myths under the name of religion.
So all truth, regardless of packaging, comes from human wisdom.
For Schopenhauer, yes. From human insight, wisdom, and the relentless philosophical search for understanding. Not from outside intervention. Hashtag outro.
Wow. What a journey through the sharp, often unsettling landscape of Schopenhauer's mind.
It's definitely a landscape that makes you think.
Absolutely. We've covered his piercing analysis of religion, its practical necessity versus its potential for harm.
Right, that constant tension.
His insights on how we consume knowledge, how we read faces, that intricate, often difficult dance between the blind will and the guiding intellect. He leaves us really with this profound, enduring tension. The undeniable human need for metaphysical comfort, for social cohesion, versus the relentless, sometimes painful pursuit of unvarnished truth.
It's not comfortable, but it feels very real.
It does. His insights resonate so powerfully, not because they offer easy answers, they definitely don't, but because they challenge us to look beyond the surface, to rigorously examine the deeper motives, the consequences, the hidden costs of our most fundamental beliefs.
Indeed. And Schopenhauer's final words on religion as a necessary evil, its necessity resting, in his rather harsh view, on the pitiful imbecility of the great majority of mankind, incapable of grasping the truth.
Yeah, that's rough.
Combined with his faint hope for a future where humanity might embrace true philosophy, it offers this potent, really uncomfortable challenge.
It forces us to ask some hard questions.
It really does.
Yeah.
Are we as a society truly capable of moving beyond these allegorical truths, beyond the mythical vehicle? Or is the pious fraud of religion still indispensable for the vast majority, providing a comfort and order that pure philosophy maybe just can't?
And what responsibility do those pursuing naked truth have in a world that maybe isn't ready for it?
Exactly. It reminds us that sometimes, as Schopenhauer chillingly suggests with his view on life's dualities, behind the cross stands the devil. There's this constant, inseparable interplay of light and shadow, of comfort and discomfort in our never-ending human quest for meaning and understanding.